The way this process works has been badly misunderstood in the kind of online literature of weight training and bodybuilding and even in sports physiology. Heavy weights can help build muscle and strength, but they are not required. So when you hear the science of muscle and muscle hypertrophy, you might think, oh, well, I'm not interested in building muscle. But muscle does many critical things. It's important for movement. It's important for metabolism. The more muscle you have, and not just muscle size, but the quality of muscle, the higher your metabolism is, and indeed the healthier you are. In addition, muscle and musculature is vital for posture. And we don't talk about posture enough. Posture is vitally important for how the rest of our body works. It's vital to how we breathe. It's actually even vital to how alert or sleepy we are. As we improve muscle quality, whether or not that's increasing muscle size or not, that changes the way that our entire system, not just our nervous system and our muscular system, but our immune system and the other organs of the body work. If your goal is to build larger muscles, there's a way to use your nervous system to trigger hypertrophy, to increase the size of those muscles. And it is indeed controlled by the nervous system. So you can forget the idea that the muscles have memory or that muscles grow in response to something that's just happening within the muscle. It's the nerve to muscle connection that actually creates hypertrophy. So if you've ever carried a box while moving, or you were carrying heavy groceries to the car, or you were exercising particularly hard and you felt the burn, well, that burning, which most people think is lactic acid, is actually something called lactate. Now, this is informative because it also tells us that burning, that acidity that we feel, can inhibit the way that our muscles work, but that lactate comes in and allows our muscles to continue to function. It's amazing to me that most people understand it in exactly the incorrect way. They think, oh, lactic acid is bad and the burn is bad. No, it reveals a number of really important things are going on with this vital molecule lactate, which can reduce acidity, reduce the burn, as well as act as a fuel. If you're an exerciser, if you're doing movement of any kind and you're interested in allocating some of that movement toward enhancing brain, heart, and liver health, there is a nice set of scientific data that points to the fact that getting lactate shuttled to the muscles by engaging this burning sensation is advantageous for the health of those other tissues. Reasons why most everyone should want to get their muscles stronger is that muscles are generally getting progressively weaker across the lifespan. So when I say getting stronger, it's not necessarily about being able to move increasing amounts of weight in the gym, but rather to offset some of the normal decline in strength and posture and the ability to generate a large range of movement safely that occurs as we age. Doing things to offset that has been shown again and again to be beneficial for the neuromuscular system, for protection of injury, for enhancing the strength of bones and bone density. So there are a lot of reasons to use resistance exercise that extend far beyond just the desire to increase muscle size. The way this process works has been badly misunderstood in the kind of online literature of weight training and bodybuilding and even in sports physiology. Heavy weights can help build muscle and strength, but they are not required. What one has to do is adhere to a certain number of parameters, just a couple of key variables that I'll spell out for you. And if you do that, you can greatly increase muscle hypertrophy, muscle size, and or muscle strength if that's what you want to do. And you don't necessarily have to use heavy weights in order to do that. Now, I'm sure the powerlifters and the people that like to move heavy weights around will say, no, if you want to get strong, you absolutely have to lift heavy weights. And that might be true if you want to get very strong. But for most people who are interested in supporting their muscular such that they offset any age-related decline in strength or in increasing hypertrophy and strength to some degree, there really isn't a need to lie about the Henneman size principle, which many people out there are doing, and claiming that you absolutely need to use the heaviest weights possible in order to build strength and muscle. So there are three major stimuli for changing the way that muscle works and making muscles stronger, larger, or better in some way. And those are stress, tension, and damage. Those three things don't necessarily all have to be present, but stress of some kind has to exist. Something has to be different in the way that the nerve communicates with the muscle and the way that the muscle contracts or performs that makes the muscle need to change. Something needs to happen. Certain chemicals need to be present. Certain processes need to happen, or else a tissue simply won't change itself. Everybody has imbalances in how well muscles can grow or how poorly or how challenging it is for their muscles to grow. Many people who are afraid of like getting too bulky, for instance, are afraid of lifting weights. But I think the research shows now that everyone of pretty much every age should be doing some sort of resistance exercise, even if that's body weight exercises, in order to offset this age-related decline in muscle contractile ability, muscle strength, etc., improve bone density. There's nothing good about getting frail and weak over time. There is a good predictor of how well or how efficient you will be in building the strength and or, if you like, the size of a given muscle. You can actually do this test right now. So for instance, if you are sitting in a chair or you're standing, see whether or not you can contract your calf muscle just using those upper motor neurons, sending a signal down and deliberately isolating the calf muscle. Okay. If you can contract the calf muscle hard to the point where that muscle almost feels like it's starting to cramp, like it hurts just a little bit, chances are you have very good upper motor neuron to calf control. And chances are, if you can isolate that, what they call the brain or mind muscle connection, and you can contract the muscle to the point where it cramps a little bit, that you hold a decent to high potential to change the strength and the size of that muscle if you train it properly. Now, if you have a hard time doing that, chances are you won't be able to do that. Everything about muscle hypertrophy, about stimulating muscle growth, is about generating isolated contractions, about challenging specific muscles in a very unnatural way. Whereas with strength, it's about using musculature as a system, moving weights, moving resistance, moving the body. So there's a critical distinction in terms of getting stronger versus trying to get muscles to be larger, hypertrophy per se, and it has to do with how much you isolate those muscles. Muscle isolation is not a natural phenomenon. It's not something that we normally do. When we walk, we don't think, okay, right calf contract, left calf contract. No, you just generate those rhythmic movements. I think most people don't really understand the mind-muscle connection. It sounds like a great thing, but it's actually one of the things you want to avoid if your goal is simply to become more supple or to become stronger. You want to do the movements properly and safely, of course, but it's the opposite of hypertrophy, where with hypertrophy, you're really trying to make that particular muscle, sometimes two muscles, do the majority, if not all the work. Whereas in moving force loads, in trying to generate activity of any kind, like lifting a bar or doing a chin-up or something, those so-called compound movements that involve a lot of muscle groups, if your goal is to be better at those, you want to avoid isolating any one particular muscle. Now, I know this probably comes across as a kind of a obvious duh, especially to the folks that have spent a lot of time in the gym aimed at getting hypertrophy. But I think most people don't appreciate that it's the nerve to muscle connections and the distinction between isolating nerve to muscle connections versus distributing the work of nerve to muscle connections that's vital in determining whether or not you generate hypertrophy, isolated nerve to muscle contractions, versus strength and offsetting strength loss, which would be distributed nerve to muscle connections.